Well, I'm going to take you to a couple of things that you've said. One is that let me put this to you right up front so that you and me intellectually are frank with each other. If I put the proposition to you that during your testimony today, you actually placed more emphasis on psychoanalyzing the parties involved. Am I accurate? Is that your testimony also ventures into psychoanalysis of why individuals do or act in certain way? Am I correct? You don't?
Psychoanalysis is a very specific technical term that requires specific training, which I do not have.
That's why you're here, man. So when you are analyzing why someone behaves in a particular way or doesn't behave in a particular way, in what realm is that?
You have sociological analysis, you have historical analysis, you have legal analysis.
Sure.
There are a whole range of ways in which you can approach the ways in which you can approach analysis.
And when you are analyzing behavioral patterns,
you can do that from a sociological point of view.
No, but I'm saying but what else can you do it from?
Well, if I had
Am I wrong if I say it's also a psychological analysis, apart from what you've just said?
If you have followed the tools of psychological analysis and what meets psychological analysis, then yes, it would be. But I would not be offering you psychological analysis.
Yes. So if you make a psychological analysis without using the exact tools, that analysis should be discarded.
It depends on what you mean by psychological analysis. If you mean offering a diagnosis of somebody, giving them a psychological label, that would be inappropriate. You would have to require certain tests to have been done, which I certainly did not do.
In the sociological one?
The sociological analysis would be looking at within the realm of what we know socially and within research which would look at things like impact. Does this fit what we know?
And in many of the things you said, you mentioned the word context, right? I want to interrogate the point context for an intellectual. Is that, am I correct that it's an endless list of factors that one must consider? Let's call them the surrounding circumstances of a particular situation. I'm not an expert. I'm just saying, teasing this with you. Would it mean looking at different circumstances that surround a particular issue that you're analyzing?
Yes, there's a range of, as you say, context has multiple variables and considerations.
And in this, you would actually have to add, and let me just guess, you would agree with me that you would look at, as a culture. Is that something important?
That would certainly be part of the consideration.
And you would look, and I think you did it to some way, patterns of behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would also look at language.
You would.
And you would also look at things that affect social relations in a given society, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would look at gender, as you correctly do in your summary, is that you would look at the particular relations between genders, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would also look at particular imposition of superior cultures over others.
That you could do, depending on the nature of the analysis you're doing.
I'm saying, for instance, and I agree with you, and I've read a lot of things you've written, and I respect what you've written. You would actually look at if you looked at male and female, let's call it stereotypical analysis, you would have to consider the fact that in a given society, males occupy a dominant position and therefore may impose, if you analyze that, and I think you did it correctly, you must take into account those unequal relations.
Mm-hmm. And I think depending again on the nature of the analysis, you would look at all the other things that interact with gender to shape how people relate.
In fact, in the introduction of your paper, and correct me if I'm wrong, you take an analysis that combines three theories of sexual harassment. And I'm not saying they're exhaustive. I'm just saying, and you're correct. I think you take a feminist approach to it. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you also take what you call it, or they call it a biological, some people call it stereotypical, but a biological approach to sexual harassment.
No, I don't take a biological approach.
Okay, so
just to be very clear, what I'm saying is the biological approach has functioned as an excuse.
Yes.
It is. I'm not saying biology explains it.
I'm not saying you adopt it. I'm saying you actually talk about those responses that people have made to sexual harassment, right? But not that you personally adopted. Do you agree with me that in your testimony, and we'll do this later, you do omit large chunks of things that are contained in what Ms. Mengo, the complainant, actually said?
That's true, because to repeat her evidence would take well, it's been said, it took her 2 weeks. You don't need me to come and repeat all of it again. So what I've presented to you is a reading of it through a particular lens, which I tried to explain.
Yes, I'm trying to compare. You're right. But I'm trying to compare that. But actually, you don't have that reluctance in analyzing what the respondent says and writes. Suddenly, when it comes to the respondent, you're quite diligent in talking about what he says. And when it comes to Miss Mengo, you're quite conscious of time and length.
Only because I was asked to hurry up. I can continue and go into great detail with the complainant if you'd like me to.
Yes, I'm saying in your choice of what you cut out when you hurry up, you choose to omit the things, I'm going to take you to them, the things that she says. That choice of yours, is it an objective, independent choice, or just it happened by chance?
No, I do pull out in my evidence, I do pull out the examples of what she's saying in response to him and look at that.
I agree. I didn't say you omit everything she says, but you agreed with me that you omit large chunks in your desire to hurry up. You do omit large chunks of what she says, and you choose to focus on what the respondent says. Don't you agree with me? You said it's because you were hurrying up.
I'm giving her response and I'm giving his response.
No, ma'am. You've agreed that you omitted those chunks because you don't want to repeat everything she said. And all I'm saying to you is that that choice, I'm putting it to you, that choice you make of what you omit is a deliberate choice. You could have chosen the things she says, like, I want you to come to me strong. You could come out and concentrate it on where she says, I want you to continue to desire me so that when you get to me, you're strong. You omit those things.
No, I didn't. I think I did highlight that. I used that as an example of where she is accommodating him when she says, when I'm strong to stand on my feet.
Yes,
I did look at that.
No, I'm going to take you there. I'm not talking about that. We're going to get there. But you agree with me, and let's not deal with this. You omitted because you were hurrying up.
I certainly didn't repeat all the testimony or everything I was going to say. Yeah. That's true.
But all I'm saying to you is that in this, you choose to focus on what you think makes a case for what I think is your theory, is that the respondent acted inappropriately. That's your theory at the end, actually.
I'm asked to make an opinion, so it's not a theory. No. That is my opinion.
I'm saying your opinion must be based on everything that's in the record. You're not just brought here to sympathize with a complainant or a victim or a respondent. You are brought here to give us an analysis by an intellectual who does not support one side. By the way, it's not wrong to support one side, but it's important to declare it. I'm saying your choice of what you omit is based on the fact that you, Lisa Vetten, supports the complainant in sexual harassment issues. And there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying to you is that an intellectual is also an intellectual and an expert because they are honest enough to state their biases. That's what makes you an intellectual, is the ability to honestly not have no bias, but your function in the world is not to be unbiased, but it's to be honest and declare your bias. That's all I'm asking you.
I was asked to give an opinion on sexual harassment. If I had read this and come to the conclusion that this was a happy, egalitarian, good relationship, I would have said that. And there have been situations where that is the conclusion I've come to, that I cannot find, that there does not appear to be makings of unwanted conduct here.
Well,
so it will depend on what's in here.
Yeah, let me start with the shortcoming then.
Okay.
In your analysis, if you don't agree with me that you are biased in favor of the complainant, because that's what I sense. And as I said to you, I don't believe that is wrong. And you've written so many things, Lisa Vetten, that help women in this situation. And I think an intellectual must declare that and say, you know, if you called me, Muzi Sikhakhane, to testify about issues that affect Black people, I would tell you right up front that actually my bias is in favor of Black people. I'm not the right intellectual or the right academic or expert. And I'm asking you honestly, Lisa, as someone whose work I respect, is that do you think, given the fact that you declare here that you focused on her examination in chief and not so much on cross-examination, right? Am I recording you correctly there?
Yeah.
So you do not have the totality of the conversation, of the analysis, because you focused on her testimony rather than weaknesses that may come when a person is cross-examined. Do you think, with what you declared, you are able to come up with something that is intellectually rigorous to help a process when you do not have a feel of the entire set of facts stated and critiqued. Do you think an intellectual can call themselves objective, as the principles say, if they have not read in depth both aspects of what is before the tribunal factually? Can they help?
That's why I was upfront about what I had read and what I hadn't read. And
I'm agreeing with you.
yeah, and that is also my expertise derives from working with complainants. That's why I do not testify on the behalf of necessarily of those accused, because I don't have expertise in that regard.
Absolutely. And so you're right where I want us to go. And I'm not tricking you. I'm treating you with all the respect I have, because I do have respect for you. I've read every article you've written. All I'm saying to you is that as an intellectual who comes to assist, and I respect the fact that you've always come to assist victims, most of whom are women, and that's a great job. All I'm saying to you is that that bias is unhelpful in a situation where you are called upon to look at the record. But in looking at the record, you do not look at certain aspects that would complete the picture. Now, every intellectual, every academic will tell you that what makes them a cut above the rest as intellectuals and experts is that they are not like me, Muzi, Sikhakhane, or anybody sitting here. They are able to overcome, rise above their own biases so that they present objective and they read even what does not agree or is consistent with their view. Do you think, having missed to read where that examination in chief is contested, your analysis is deficient to assist the process? Your views, you are entitled to them. But your analysis is not objective if you declare that your analysis is based on reading one aspect that's untested. That's all I'm saying to you.
My analysis is predominantly focused on the WhatsApps. My analysis is predominantly focused on the WhatsApps, which is what you have and what the complainant has. You will test my version under cross-examination.
No, I agree. All I'm saying is that when you don't have the totality of the record, it has an impact on the intellectual output, which is what is required here. We actually could have called anyone if we wanted views of people who sympathize with men who harass or victims who are harassed. We could have called anybody. We could have called a journalist. We could have called anybody. We called you. You were called. And we respected that you are called. Because you are going to offer us what an intellectual should offer, why you are a cut above us, it's because you read everything, including what does not make your case. That's what makes you different from us. We read what we like. We discard what we don't. As an intellectual, your analysis is deficient if you've declared what you've declared. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's deficient, does not meet the standard called objective. Would you agree with me?
No, I wouldn't, because my primary form of analysis was based on the WhatsApps. Some of the evidence in chief I read because there was a lot of confusion around translation and what words mean. So it was to gain some clarity around that. I did have a look at that. My evidence was my brief was to look at these WhatsApps. You will test what I have to say through cross-examination, and that's where you test whether or not I am objective, do offer expertise or don't offer expertise.
Would what you say, and I think you must agree with me here, you the expert, when you read the totality of things, you must also read the version of the person you may probably not like, the so-called perpetrator. It's important for you as an intellectual to take that into account in coming to whatever opinion you come to. It's important to read everything. I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying your opinions are illegitimate. I'm saying as an intellectual process for which you are called, which is expertise, you are called upon to evaluate a wide variety of existing circumstances in a given intellectual project and come up with something not which is just your subjective view, but something supported by data that you have. And if you don't, you say so.
The primary data is the WhatsApps. That's what I focused on, which is why you won't find me commenting on the videos or any of the other evidence that was suggested. I don't know about that. I haven't read that. This I can read for myself.
Yes.
And
that's not your fault, Mr. Vetten. If people called you to analyze only the WhatsApps, it's not your fault. All I'm saying to you, forget the lawyers who call you because they have a case to fight. You don't. All I'm saying to you, your analysis is deficient, and not because you are not intellectual. It's deficient if you are unable to deal with what you call context. But context is a wide variety of factors and circumstances present, including versions of different players in a particular event. I'm saying, because you were instructed just to look at WhatsApp, some of which you omitted, but you told us why, the outcome of your analysis may not be a totality of an analysis that should be made to assist. It may just constitute a version of what you read, an analysis of individuals and their behavioral patterns, as you say. But we can't call it objective and rely on it because it doesn't take into account other aspects that should be poured into the context.
Well, to be frank, I don't have the Judge President's version. I haven't heard it yet. So it is obviously hard to be able to know what he would say. If I had his statement, then that would be different, but I don't have his statement.
Well, you do. What did his answering affidavit? Did you read his answering affidavit?
I did not get a copy of his answering affidavit.
Right. All I'm saying to you, and please
which
hear
I was
me,
not aware existed.
Absolutely. Please hear me well. I could never attack an intellectual because you do great work. All I'm saying is that it's important for you to be given all material that is available when people want you to make an opinion. And as I tell you now, and you confirm, first, because you were told to hurry up, there's something you didn't read. You declared that, right? You declared that you actually didn't have much sight into the cross-examination, right? We know now that you didn't even bother to read, or you were not given, you were not given by those who want you here. They did not give you his version that already is in the papers, right? With that in mind, I want to put this to you. Having not been given material sufficient for you to make an informed, objective analysis, I'm putting it to you that your analysis, because of that, is deficient for present purposes. It would be nice if you knew his version, at least in the affidavit.
You will presumably put that to me under cross-examination.
No, I am.
And then I will agree or disagree.
I'm putting it to you that because you did not have sight of his version, at least in the affidavit, there is something missing in your analysis.
Yes, I don't have his analysis, that's correct.
Yeah. And when you look at the record, you also do not look at in depth, as you said. When the version of the complainant is tested, because the test for truth of versions of people, and I'm not even suggesting that the respondent's version in the affidavit is the and be all of this, because it should be tested. The real test that an intellectual should go to when assessing something and they're not a supporter of one side is where this version of one person is tested. That for me, and I think is the crux that intellectuals like yourself do. You read sometimes what's uncomfortable, what contradicts your views, and that's when the product is intellectually sound. Not when you avoid where ideas and versions are tested.
I don't have, as I said to you, I didn't have those materials.
Yes. Would you agree with me that because of that, not because of your fault, you are unhelpful? Your version is unhelpful. Your opinion is unhelpful, not because you are not intellectual, because it lacks those aspects.
That's not my decision to make. That is the tribunal, that is the chair and the panel's decision to make.
I'm putting it to you that because of what you've agreed, you did not look at. It makes your opinion biased, one-sided, and incomplete.
I'm going to disagree with you.
It's fine.
Because what I was also giving general evidence on was on sexual harassment. Its context, how it is thought about, in order to be able to provide a context within which to interpret the complainant's evidence.
I'm going to get there.
I mean, because I haven't even interviewed the complainant either, so I wouldn't know exactly. No particular insight. So in that sense, it should make a contribution. I'm going
to get there, Elizabeth, and I'm not suggesting that your views don't make a contribution. They do. Most papers you write do. They've helped many women be understood better because this is a serious matter that women face. All I'm saying to you is that when you lack material for you to make an informed opinion for purposes of a tribunal, it's deficient. Not that you are deficient. I'm saying the outcome is compromised intellectually.
Within the scope of the brief, that is what I have provided evidence on. That will be up to the chair and his assessors to decide whether or not it added value.